Alright, we're here, week 18, the final week of the NFL season. The let's get straight into it. Power rankings, let's get straight into it. Number 10, I got the Bills. Why the Bills? Why? They lost to the Eagles. Why? Well, they were 7 last week, so they did drop. However, I can't really find a good team that's 10, personally. It was between the Bills, the Chargers, and the Packers. That's what it was between. I picked the Bills ultimately because they have had the most experience in this whole with the playoffs. Because this is the final week of the season. We're heading into the playoffs next week. And basically my worst fears for the Bills have become realized. Now it happened against my team. Yep. We will talk about that game a little bit more, but we'll talk about it now because it's the Bills. Basically, my worst fears for the Bills became realized. They relied way too much on Josh Allen, and when we shut down Josh Allen, they were in trouble. Eventually, they were able to get back, and they made it a 1-point game. And why do the Eagles have to make it so stressful? Why can't we have just a shutout? Or at least keep them down at least 1, maybe 2 touchdowns, and we score like 4. I understand it's the Bills, but can we at least have, like, if we were going 13-0, can we at least keep that? At least, like, because that first half was not stressful. Aside from that long bomb that Josh Allen threw, which then he fumbled, so, I mean, yeah. That was like the only stressful thing that happened in the first quarter. Really the first half. That first half was us. We completely just dominated that first half. And the Bills were reliant way too much on Josh Allen. And we finally were able to contain him enough to where he wasn't that big of a threat. And same with James Cook. Him and James Cook, the Bills, in my opinion, rely on way too much. But the Bills are still number 10 because, well, the only other options were the Chargers, the Steelers, and the Packers. So, yeah, the Bills are number 10. Number 9, I got the Bears. I have mixed feelings about this Bears, about how this Bears team lost. On one hand, I am happy because we could still get the 2 seed. We just need them to lose to the Lions, and we have to beat the Commanders, which we should be able to do. We just need them to lose to the Lions, which may not happen. So I'm happy in that sense. Here's where I'm not that happy, though. I picked the Bears to win that game, and the Bears came this close to winning that game. So, yeah. The Bears, they're a good team. Ultimately, the 49ers, I'm not going to say outplayed them, but they played well enough. Well, not well enough. They played really well. Like, really, really well. And they were able to do enough offensively. They didn't have to worry. Like, they did finally break the streak of not punting. They did punt a couple times. But other than that, I mean, the 49ers pretty much offensively had the game under control. This was a shootout. And it came down to who got 12 last, and the Bears went down the field. Ben Johnson was good in calling a timeout. However, I would say that second timeout he called, I wouldn't have called that second timeout then. I would have called that second timeout when they called his last timeout, and then the last timeout I would have called after that insane hook and lateral, which got him a 1st and goal, because they wasted they barely were able to get only one play off after that. Because if they were able to call a timeout there, then the Bills, then the Bears have to. If they're able to call a timeout, then the Bears have at least 2 plays, at least, to go down and get a touchdown. I mean, they were at the 4-yard line. But yeah, Caleb Williams didn't live up to his Iceman, ice in his veins. What the heck? Okay, we're good. Camera started getting blurry. The whole ice in his veins thing didn't pan out this time. It panned out against the Packers because of the weak defense, but the Bears still played well. They played well enough. Both teams could have won that game. Both teams had a very good chance of winning that game. But yeah, Bears, they're 9. We'll move on to 8. 8, 49ers. Yep, we're talking about the 49ers now. The 49ers, on the other hand, again played very well on offense. Defense, obviously. The Bears played well on offense, so they kind of trumped the defense a little bit. The 49ers can still get the 1 seed. They got to beat the Seahawks. I don't think they will, personally. Seattle already had that weird game against the 49ers where they had the lead for the majority of the game, and then Brock Purdy came back and won the game. I don't think they're going to let that happen again, personally. I think they're going to play well enough, and they're going to win this game. It'll probably be a low-scoring game, though. That's my opinion with the game, but we'll talk about that tomorrow. The 49ers right now still could get the 1 seed, and they could also still get the 6 seed with even though the Rams lost, which we'll talk about the Rams in a minute. But the 49ers, they are confusing. They are a confusing team because they shouldn't be this good because of how injured they are. However, they are this good. So, clearly, the 49ers have found some good reserves on their team. And it doesn't matter if their stars go down because they got the backups that are just as good, or maybe not just as good as, like, say, Nick Bosa or Fred Warner, but close enough to where, okay, this is... They can still compete. And that's what we're seeing. Initially, usually when this happens, when the 49ers get really injured like this, they just collapse. And they don't. They didn't this year. They have 12 wins and they could still get the 1 seed. So, they didn't collapse. That's the only thing that could have happened in this game. Was the 49ers were able to have found a good reserves to where they can. It doesn't matter if they lose someone like Fred Warner for a season because they've got 2 or 3 guys that's just as good that are younger that are going to come in and take his place. They're able to do that, and they're not just able to take his place. They actually can take his place. It actually feels like he's still on the team. And that's really what's happened, in my opinion, with the 49ers this year, is the whole idea of that they will collapse isn't the case anymore. And is this really the 49ers year? Maybe. Like I said, I don't think they're going to get the 1 seed. I don't think they're going to let Seattle win. Personally, I don't think it is their year, but it could be. I mean, the Chiefs aren't around to beat them in the Super Bowl anymore, so who knows? Maybe it will be their year. Maybe they will get that 6th Super Bowl. But yeah, 49ers, they're 8. So, yeah. Number 7, I got the Philadelphia Eagles. Alright. I was very, 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 very impressed with our offensive display in that first half. I was very, 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 very disappointed when we stopped playing like that in the second half and we started playing not to lose because we almost lost. There is no way. We were starting to play way too conservatively. We weren't playing to win anymore. We were just playing not to blow it. And that's ultimately what happened. We nearly blew it. The Bills almost came back in 5 minutes. Down 13. So, yeah. So, ultimately, we need to be better offensively all 4 quarters. Not just half the game. So, I don't know. If this is what the Kevin Patullo experience looks like, personally, I don't want to be a part of it. Personally, I don't want to be a part of it. I personally would rather see him get fired. If this is going to be what if he cannot provide an offense for a full game, then he doesn't need to be an offensive coordinator. At least not on a team that won a Super Bowl and is trying to repeat. Can we repeat? I think we are a lot more dangerous than initially I thought we were when we started losing games. However, I don't think we will. There's one team that's going to stand in our way. And I really honestly do think it's their year. The Seahawks. We'll talk about them later. But I really do think it's their year this year. I do. So yeah. The Seahawks. The Eagles are 7. We move up from 10. And we beat the Bills. We beat the Bills. So, yeah. Number 6, I got the Rams. What was that? I'm sorry. There is no reason. There's no reason the Rams should have lost this game. No reason. They were down 21-0 at halftime. How do you lose to the Falcons, who have 6 losses? 6 wins with Kirk Cousins as their quarterback. If this was Michael Penix Jr., okay, all right, that might make sense. But Kirk Cousins, first off, Kirk Cousins already had his legacy game. That was against the Buccaneers when they came back. Clearly, he had another one. Now, defensively, they played well enough. Well enough, what am I talking about? Defensively, that's where they won the game. They shut down Stafford defensively to where Kirk Cousins didn't really have to do much, a whole lot. So, is this really a Kirk Cousins legacy game? Maybe. Not really. That was mainly when they made their crazy comeback against Tampa on Thursday Night Football. That was pretty much all the offense. But that was also the defense collapsing for Tampa. But I can't believe I had Tampa as a top 5 team at one point this season. This Tampa team completely disappointed everyone. But anyway, Rams are 6. How do you do that? How? And on top of that, they came back and almost won, and then they lost. They allowed the Falcons to get down and kick a field goal and win the game, and then they still had an opportunity. They still had 30 seconds left. And they were throwing the ball downfield, which makes sense. However, they were throwing the ball. He was throwing the ball downfield and uncovered receivers. Now I know what he was trying to do, and it's get the refs to call a pass interference, which for one of those throws was PI. I don't know how they didn't see that. But the Rams ultimately lost, and when it really came down to it, with 5 seconds left, he throws it where field goal range is. Personally, I'm not looking to kick a field goal because I'm not anticipating he'll get out of bounds. Now, he did somehow get out of bounds. before the hit 0, but however, it was 4th down. So, even though they called it already the game, but really, in reality, if they called it correctly, all would have happened is the Falcons just would have needed for 1 second. But there was 1 second of playing time. But anyway, Rams, I don't know. Rams, they clearly are. They are now really showing that they are still very flawed. And is this their originally around mid-season? I'm thinking this may be the Rams year. It may be, but not after. The Seattle game makes sense. Okay, this game went out of control. The Panthers game is another prime example of that. The Rams are too flawed for me to say they are Super Bowl favorites. They may make the Super Bowl, which I'll be very shocked, especially with who they'd be playing with, who they would end up having to play down the season. If you can force Stafford like with the Seahawks, Sam Darnold's got a turnover problem. Well, the Seahawks still win those games. Like, aside from that Rams game, but even then, they still had the opportunity to win that game with that field goal. But aside from that first Rams game, yeah, Sam Darnold, yeah, does he have a turnover problem? Yes. However, they only have 3 losses. Rams have 5. And in those losses, they did not win the turnover battle. And that was the key. So, yeah. Or they just completely blew it. Or they had field goal issues. The Eagles, when we were their first loss, and then their second loss was to... Yeah, it was to the 49ers. And then their next loss after that was to the Panthers, and then the Seahawks, and now the Falcons. So, yeah. But anyway, Rams, wow. You need to get better, because you're definitely not what I thought you were. Number 5, I got the Texans. We need to start going quick. I've already spent like 20 minutes here. Texans. The Texans. Thank you. Good job. This is exactly what I thought you could do. I knew they were going to beat. I knew they were going to beat LA. I picked them to beat LA, and they ultimately beat LA. Good job. Good job. The Texans are a really good team. Who's going to come out of the AFC? I don't know. I think, like I said, I think I know who's going to come out of the NFC. However, who's going to come out of the AFC is my question. It could be Denver. It could be New England. And it could be Houston. It also could be Jacksonville, but we'll talk about them a little bit later. The Texans are a really good team when the defense gets to the quarterback and the defense plays very well. I don't mean like plays like well enough. I mean plays very well. And this is a game where they played very well. Another game like that was the Chiefs game where they forced like 3 interceptions on Mahomes. That was another game where they played very well. So, the Texans are a good team when the defense plays well. The offense doesn't necessarily need to play well as long as the defense plays really well. That's what's happening. And they don't allow scores. And that's what happened. They won. They won. Now you can't argue that really they shouldn't have been in that position to win because of that pass interference call, I still think they would have gotten there. That illegal, it was like elite, not pass interference, but it was like that illegal contact call that everyone's freaking out about. So yeah, but the Texans, I think they could be one of the teams that come out of the AFC. I think there's a lot of teams that could come out of the AFC, and they're one of them. Moving on, number 4, I got the Rams. Yeah, I got the Rams. I got the Rams twice. Number 4, I got the Jaguars. Well, maybe the Jaguars are just going to win out heading into the playoffs. However, is that good for them? I don't know. See, I like this Jaguars team. I do. And I think they can definitely compete for a Super Bowl, maybe even this year. Like I said, Jaguars could come out of the AFC. Any of these next few teams I'm going to mention could come out of the AFC. Jaguars are another one that I think could come out of the AFC. And are they playing? Like right now, they seem to be playing well. However, here is the thing. Denver found this out, and so did New England. That's why I think they're a better team. Houston never really went. Houston's going on a run right now. But, Jacksonville hasn't figured this out yet, unless you want to count the start of the season, like towards the middle, before they started winning games. But Jacksonville, aside from that Denver win, hasn't really played anybody. Again, since they've gone on this winning streak, they haven't really played anybody. They haven't. I predicted that they would lose to the Colts. And here's why. Number 1, I think Phillip Rivers, number 1, deserves a win. Deserves at least one win when he's with the Colts. And I think the Colts can win at least one more game. Will it be against Houston? Who knows? But you can say they kind of Houston. It was kind of similar to what happened with Houston. Like Indianapolis played very, very hard, and it almost looked like they were going to win. But then Jacksonville pulled ahead at the last minute, pulled ahead towards the end of the game and won. Is this ultimately good for them? For them to constantly be winning these kind of games? I would argue no. And I would give the same reason I had when the Patriots lost to the Bills, or the Broncos losing to the Jaguars. Like, the Jaguars had a good win against Denver. Like, a really good win. But you cannot tell me that big head isn't slowly beginning to bloom. And it almost struck, I think, in this game against the Colts. It may strike against the Titans, which for Houston's sake would be perfect, because if Houston beats the Colts, then they get then they win the division. I think that will be Jacksonville's saving grace if they lose. Not lose because their starters didn't play, but just lose. They just get eliminated. They just get completely destroyed. Or they get destroyed enough, like the starters are playing, and it's similar to the Broncos game or the Patriots game where they lost. That's what I think. That's what I actually think is good for Jacksonville. Because then that tells them that they're not all that they think they are, and they can still get better. I think that's good for any good team. You can argue that happened to Seattle with that Rams game. You can argue that happened, in my opinion, that happened with the Bills game. That happened with the Broncos game with the Broncos. It happened with the Jaguars. For the Texans, has it happened yet? I mean, technically the first half of the year it happened, but yeah, the Rams did it happen? Well, if it happens twice in a row, that's not good. Like, you can argue that for the Rams, it was the Seahawks. But then this game is the problem. When you drop 2 straight, I don't mean dropping 2 or 3 straight games. I mean 1 game, and then you look great after that game. Not you lose in a close one to a really good team, and then you blow it to a 6-win team. No. The Eagles, that kind of happened already, with going on like a mini slope with losing those last couple of games. The 49ers, I don't know. The 49ers, I haven't really seen that. The Bears, you can argue it was this 49ers game, potentially. It might have been. The Bills, in my opinion, are just not that good. But the Broncos, the Jaguars are still a good team. And I think losing to Tennessee is actually good for them ultimately than beating Tennessee. However, you want to get the division, so of course they're going to try and beat Tennessee. But I think ultimately it's good for them in the long run. In the short run, it's good for them because they win the division. But that's giving them home field advantage, and that's okay. Like, oh yeah, we beat these guys already. Well, I mean, in a way, that kind of happened in Houston. Anyway, what? That happened with Jacksonville, with the Texans game. So maybe it did happen with Jacksonville already. But anyway, whatever. The Jaguars are still a good team, and I think could come out of this division. Could come out of this conference. Number 3, I got the Broncos. Bad game, and yet you still won. Back to the old habits, it looks like, for Denver. They don't play good enough to dominate the game. They don't play to dominate, they play to barely win. I don't know why they do that. Bo Nix apparently doesn't know either. But why they have to make it stressful is beyond me. But the Broncos are still a good team. They have now swept the Chiefs. So, good job for them. You did it. You swept the Chiefs with a third-string quarterback. But you did beat them with Mahomes, so, I mean, it does work. The Broncos, again, like I said, I'm going to say this about the Texans. I said this about the Texans, the Jaguars, so I'm going to say about the Patriots in a minute. They could come out of this conference. Any of these 4 teams I just mentioned could come out of this conference. They are the top 4 in my opinion. They are. They are the top 4 teams in the AFC. In my opinion, they're all tied. Any of them could get it. And I'll be very surprised if it's not one of those 4 teams. The Broncos are a really good defensive team and a mediocre to okay offensive team. And that can hurt them when they want to dominate a game and when they should dominate a game. Because this is a game that they should have dominated. There was no reason this game should have been a 1-score game. There was no reason the Chiefs should have been leading at one point in the game. Unless it was like the first drive that they had. Like they got the first drive and they were able to somehow get like a field goal or something. But leading 7-3 after you kick a field goal. Slow drive, which results in a field goal, and then you let the Chiefs go down and get a touchdown. That's not helping your case. That should not have happened, personally. The Broncos, they are a good team, and like I said, it could be any of them. Any of these teams could come out. However, The Broncos, I think, might be the least likely to come out, personally. I think they will be. I think the Texans have a better chance. The Texans are actually very similar to Denver, so honestly, they're more or less tied. The Jaguars, I think, have a good chance, a really good chance, and the Patriots, I think, have the best chance, personally. However, how will this team play during the playoffs? Is yet to be seen. So we need more proof. Like the Broncos, they've been to the playoffs, this Broncos team. The Jaguars, they were there a couple of years ago, so like Trevor Lawrence has been there and stuff like that, but not really. The Texans have been there for the last now 3 years. This is now the 3rd year they've been to the playoffs. So personally, Denver, that's the biggest problem I see with New England is the majority of this team has not been to the playoffs. I mean, Vrabel has, but the rest of the team really hasn't. Except for Stephon Diggs. I mean, he's been there, but I'm not talking about a couple guys. I'm talking about, like, the majority of the team. And you can argue for the Jaguars. It's kind of the same thing because this is more or less still sort of a new team. A newer team than back in 2022 when they were winning the division and the Jaguars were looking amazing until they collapsed, and then the Texans took their place basically in the AFC West, South. But yeah, number 2, I got the Patriots. The Patriots are, like I said, in my opinion, the more than likely best team out of this whole batch of teams. Personally, I think they are. However, like I said, the Patriots the majority of this team has never been to the playoffs. So how will this team play as a team during the playoffs is going to matter. So, as much as I think they're the best team out of the 4, I think in some cases all the teams are better than them because they all have playoff experience. So, the Patriots haven't been to the playoffs since Mac Jones in 2021 when he took the league by storm that lasted 1 season. The Patriots are like I said, the best team in my opinion. However, I'm not fully certain about how well this team would play in the playoffs. So that's where I'm concerned. That's the biggest critique. They dominated the Jets like they should. See Denver, that's what you're supposed to do against a bad team. Not allow the game to be close the whole time. Honestly, all the Christmas games were bad, but surprisingly, the best game was the Cowboys-Commanders. So, personally, I thought the best game was going to be Lions-Vikings, potentially. And it kind of was, but kind of wasn't. But, anyway. Seahawks, they're number 1. Number 1, I got the Seahawks. Like I said, Seattle's my Super Bowl favorite, personally. I think they're the best team in the NFC, and I think they're the best team in the league. I've been saying it, honestly. I've not been saying it the whole season. I thought this team could definitely win the West. And I've been saying that the whole year. If the Rams don't look the best, this is the best team in my opinion. And then the 49ers are kind of a wild card. They may do well, they may do not. They did well. And then the Cardinals, they kind of are the same as well. They're kind of like, they're iffy. They may do well, they may do not. I have been saying that since the beginning of the year. However, I've not been saying that they're a Super Bowl favorite. I've been saying they're a Super Bowl favorite probably since around mid-season when they broke, I think, like 7-2 or like right before that Rams game against that first Rams game. It's like, okay, this is a really good team, and I really like the Seahawks team. There's very few teams I really like. Jacksonville and Seattle, I would watch that for the Super Bowl. I think that's a really good Super Bowl matchup. I think Houston and Seattle's a really good Super Bowl matchup. I think New England and Seattle's a really good Super Bowl matchup. But do I think... And here's the big thing with Philadelphia. I don't think we're here. I don't think we're at this level yet. We're on Seattle's level. We're not good. We're good defense. We're good defensively. We're not good offensively. And that's the problem. Whatever. I'm gonna be fuzzy. But anyway. So, that's why I don't think we're a Super Bowl favorite this year. That's why I don't for the Eagles. The Seahawks, they're number one. That's the reason. The Seahawks can do good when they need to offensively, and they're already good defensively. So that's the difference with Philadelphia. They're not good offensively when they have to be. So that's the problem. But anyway, that's why I've got... Anyway, those are my power rankings for the final week of the season. For the final week of the regular season. We're on the push for 500 subscribers. Last I checked, we're at 499, so we're one away. As soon as I get this video out and another video, I have to work on a few more videos for my Southwest Gamer channel. Link in the description for that. It's a sport gaming channel. I have to continue to make a few more videos, and then I will hopefully, if we're still at 499, hopefully by like the end of the day, I will probably be streaming, hopefully hitting 500 subscribers. But yeah, it depends. More than likely, I'll probably get to 500 before I can stream. But heads up, I will probably be streaming. It's like a 50-50 chance. It depends on if we're still at 499 by like probably by like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. So yeah, but yeah, those are my power rankings for week 18, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video.